Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, Pankaj Sampat, the Area Director Sri Lanka, Maldives and Malaysia and Head of Taj Asia and Taj Safaris, is in the hot seat today as we tackle one of the key contributors to the national economy, the hospitality sector. Next up, Nielsen's Director of Consumer Insights, Sarita Miyanadeniya, analyzes the LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index, which continues its upward momentum. And in our final segment, LMD's columnist Shiran Fernando raises the prospect of a global recession and the likely impact on Sri Lanka and the Asian region. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to Benchmark, the Big Picture Business Program. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. The hospitality sector in Sri Lanka has been facing a mixed year. And what is the need of the hour to boost the hospitality sector's growth? And also, have the recent presidential election results, is it going to impact the sector in any way? To address these and other pertinent issues, we are joined by Pankaj Sampat, the Area Director, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Malaysia, and Head of Taj Asia and Taj Safaris. Mr. Sampat, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today. How do you view the hospitality sector at this point of time?
So actually I always tell everyone that Sri Lanka is really one of the finest places in terms of tourism. It's got abundance of multiple things, right from you can do temple tourism, you can do beach tourism, you can do hills, you can do mountains, you can do wildlife. So I think what Sri Lanka offers is so much in terms of tourism, and the experiences that it offers creates unique opportunities for guests to keep coming back again and again. And I think going forward, if this is marketed well, then currently you are at approximately, I would say we are at in fact, 2.5 million tourists a year. I think we can easily cross 5 million at some point in time.
We are 1 month after the presidential election. Do you expect the result of the presidential election to actually impact the sector in any way?
Actually, from what I have seen in the first 1 month that has happened post the elections, there has been a lot of positive reforms that have been created by the government. A lot of announcements have been made, and I think this is in the right direction. Reduction of taxes and the VAT per se is an incentive for people to spend in the country and increases consumption. So that is the first part of it. But what it gives is a very positive vibe in terms of what is going to come for future for this country in terms of tourism. And while I do not want to make any guesses at this point in time, but I think the perception is that this government will definitely introduce many more steps, positive steps, to promote tourism in Sri Lanka.
So you mentioned that Sri Lanka can cross that 5 million arrival target. What do you consider as the need of the hour to boost the hospitality sector's growth?
So a couple of them to start off with, predominantly because what has happened in the past in terms of companies that have invested in Sri Lanka, predominantly in the hospitality industry, a company like IHCL, which has been here for almost 30 plus years and has seen the civil war, etc. Some of our investments have not paid back. And I think what government needs to recognize is also that we stood in this country over a period of time. We stayed put, and what we would expect, and I think most other partners also who are in the industry today would expect maybe some kind of a concession on the land price predominantly, some kind of concession in terms of the bank loans, at least a moratorium in terms of the payment schedule, etc. I think these are some of the things that are need of the hour. I think it's while it may look difficult on the short-term basis, but I think over a long-term period, I think it will create a huge opportunity for the industry. It will also create a huge opportunity in terms of jobs for people. It also, and mind you, with the hotels, it's not just only the jobs that are created at the hotel. It creates 10 other jobs in ancillary businesses, right from the airport sector to people who provide taxis to even the person who's sitting opposite and selling something. So there is so much opportunity that it creates. So I think tourism sector, I think there's a need for investment in hotels. Need for investment in hotels, not in key cities like Colombo, which is already overcrowded at this point, but there are other destinations that you need to promote. Places like Kandy, places like Gaul, Jaffna, Trincomalee.
With your work experience in Sri Lanka, in India and Malaysia, how important do you think are public-private partnerships?
I think it's extremely important. Public-private partnerships, not just in creation of assets, like the way I mentioned before. I think public-private partnership also in terms of creation of talent. And I come from India, where we do a lot of work with the government predominantly on skill development. And it's a very, very focused activity in terms of creating livelihood for people. And what we do is predominantly we work with the government to kind of identify localities where education is not easily reachable, or people who need guidance, people who need counseling. And we set up centers there where we provide skills. And these skills are not only related to the hotels, it's skills related to maybe engineering, it's skills related to housekeeping, it's skills related to cooking. So eventually some of these people will actually go on to becoming professionals in times to come. And I think this partnership is important, not only just in terms of creation of assets, as I mentioned before. It's also important that we look at, when we say that we have got 5 million tourists coming to this country, where is the talent to look after those 5 million tourists? So I think what we are working also is a very proactive approach in terms of partnering with the government to develop skills that can take care of the inflow of new tourists that keep coming to this country.
And still on that subject of public-private partnerships, now the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka President Sanat Ukwata recently called for an amendment to the Tourism Act to transfer control of the Marketing and Promotions Fund to a Tourism Joint Council to make it a little more proactive. In your opinion, should a PPP be set up to undertake promotional activities for Sri Lanka?
I would agree with this thought process predominantly, because what happened post 21st April, there was an opportunity to kind of really do a lot of work in terms of promoting the destination. The general opinion was that it was not done to the fullest. While there were efforts made in bits and pieces, I think what was required was a complete reach out effort which needed to be done to kind of get this country back to normalcy. And I think if there's a public-private partnership that kind of manages this initiative, you will definitely see a lot more speed and agility. I think what we are really looking for is predominantly agility in terms of getting things moving fast. And I think that's the thought process behind the statement that he made earlier. And going forward, I would think that it also there is a team of professionals that work together. It's not just only about a public-private partnership. I think private partnership also brings in wealth of knowledge of people who've traveled around the world, wealth of knowledge in terms of their expertise, wealth of knowledge in terms of what will work and what won't will work. So I think all this is extremely important in kind of taking feedback from these professionals. And I think once this feedback comes into play, the approach that is taken further is a far more professional approach, a far more agile approach. And I think it's the country which is going to benefit. I think that's the way to look at it. I think it's not about who takes the initiative. It's about working together to make sure the country does well. I think that's the way to look at it.
So we will resume this discussion after a short commercial break. Time for a commercial break. When we come back, we ask Pankaj Sampat to rate Sri Lanka's tourism offering in terms of attractions and entertainment. And we also ask him for his views on sustainable tourism initiatives. Do stay with us.
Done. 1,500 go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Thank you for staying with Benchmark. We now resume our conversation we've been having with Pankaj Sampat, the Area Director, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Malaysia, and Head of Taj Asia and Taj Safaris. What is your take on the government's decision to recognize the tourism industry as an export industry?
It is a great initiative if it's firstly considered as an industry, secondly if it is considered as an export industry. And I think the biggest driver of that statement is that the kind of foreign exchange this industry earns for this country. And I'm just saying foreign exchange, not just purely with what they spend in the hotels, but whatever they do in terms of the travel, the visa fees, etc., etc. It brings a lot of foreign exchange. And I think for a country like Sri Lanka, which is predominantly a very high import economy, where you import a lot, I think for the balance of payment, it's extremely important that you also have a fair amount of earning in dollars. And with very few industries that can kind of do that in Sri Lanka, like tea, garment, spices, and tourism, of course. I think tourism being the largest of them, or tea being the largest of them. I would say that it's extremely important that this industry is looked into as an industry which is an export industry.
Do you think the sector is adequately addressing the brain drain issue in your view? I mean, the Tourism Skills Committee feels that we need at least 25,000 to 30,000 additional employees into the sector each year. But are we addressing that?
A lot of work needs to get done, predominantly to kind of send the message to the youth of this country that there is a great opportunity for them to work in this industry. A lot of them will do exceptionally well if they stay back in terms of having a career which is really, really meaningful. Even the young youth of Sri Lanka needs to understand that there's a great growth potential for this country. They have to stay back. They have to believe in this growth. They have to develop themselves. I'm not saying it's going to come easy. They have to focus on developing themselves, their knowledge, their skills, and I think they can be part of the growth story. So that is one part where the understanding comes in for the young people, where they believe there is a story that they can follow. The other part is you have to create the infrastructure for them to develop. And I just think that while there's so much happening in terms of construction, like the port city, etc., I didn't find any place where there were institutes being created, and I think that's where you need to do.
Sri Lanka was recently ranked 4th in the Condé Nast Travelers Readers' Choice Awards for 2019. How would you rate Sri Lanka's tourism offering in terms of entertainment and attractions?
In terms of the landscape, Sri Lanka is fantastic. It's unbelievable. And for somebody who just thought Sri Lanka was only Colombo and Bentota and Galle and Kandy, I think Sri Lanka is so much more than that. I realized that in the 9 months that I spent in Sri Lanka. I think it's under-marketed in terms of the destinations. There are so many beautiful destinations which are under-marketed. There is a lot to be done as well in terms of infrastructure, in terms of development that needs to be done to kind of make sure that when people flock to this country, there is enough infrastructure to kind of accommodate everybody. So whether it's hotels, whether it's restaurants, whether it's washrooms, whether it's the train facility. For example, if you want to take a train from here to Ella, most of the time you won't get a ticket on the train. And while you go to the station, you would realize that there are tickets available, but it's not available online. So I'm just saying some of these things kind of need to get developed. I think once you do that, I think it makes travel easy for people who come into the country. And I think going forward, I think it will make a lot of difference in terms of ease of travel across Sri Lanka.
Continuing on that answer, in which areas do you think infrastructure development is needed to boost growth in this sector? Recently, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a $400 million credit line for infrastructure development. So how much of that, or what do you think needs to be done for this sector to boost tourism growth?
So it starts predominantly from the airport itself. I think right from the airport, I think with so many tourists arriving into the country, I think the airport needs to get developed first. That's one which takes care of the immediate entry point. A lot of work has been done in the last couple of years in terms of developing roads and networks across the country. I feel there's a lot more that can be done on that front as well. I think in terms of railways, there's another opportunity in terms of travel between two destinations. There are trains available, but I think it's pretty there are very limited number of trains that travel between destinations, and some of them take too long. While there are some express ones, there are some really slow ones. I think that can be that's something that needs to get looked into. Development in terms of public washrooms, etc., I think is something else that I think needs to get looked into. I think from my travel experience, I think that was one of the shortcomings I felt could have been looked into. In terms of homestays, I think there are so many new homestays that have come into play. I think recently I saw somewhere that the government is giving loans predominantly for people to refurbish their homestays, etc., which I think is a fabulous initiative. But looking at the credit line which has been given in terms of infrastructure, I would look at predominantly the airport, roads, and the railway to help grow tourism in this country.
The Colombo City Tourist Hotels Association recently pledged to eliminate the use of single-use plastic to preserve Sri Lanka's appeal as a leading tourist destination. What is your assessment of the sector's initiatives to promote sustainable tourism?
So I think this is something which I think everybody takes it very, very seriously. I don't think it's a statement to be made just for the sake of making a statement. I think it's something that most hotels really believe here in Sri Lanka. I think that's a very, very strong culture which is there, or sentiment which is there in this country. And everything, right from the fact that everybody evaluates everything so systematically. Hotels like ours, for that matter, we shifted to having our own bottling plant at the hotel where we use glass bottles. Similarly, our other two hotels in Sri Lanka, Bentota, we have a property which has already moved last year into doing something similar. As we speak, the Airport Garden Hotel is going into a bottling plant in the next coming year. And there are similar many other hotels which are actually now, some of them are putting pressure on the vendor. We've got some colleagues or friends who work in the bottling industry, water, where they use plastic. And in fact, they got a call from one of the hotels and said, why don't you start bottling in glass bottles? I think that thought is brilliant. I think the understanding of the situation that, yes, we need to be an industry which is sustainable. So we are looking at every option. I think everybody, and not just me, I'm talking about for the Taj, which is here in Sri Lanka. I think most hotel chains are looking at it very seriously, whether it's recycling of water, whether it's waste management, conversion of organic waste into something that can be used like a compost, things like your glass bottles versus plastic. I think this is a very, very serious initiative that is being conducted by most hotels in Sri Lanka. In fact, there are some hotels that even promote zero carbon weddings, zero carbon conferences. I think it's a great thought process. I think we are moving very, very well, and I think it's going to be there, and I don't think it's going to be taken lightly at any point in time.
So we're moving into 2020. What do you see for the tourism sector in the next year?
So I was very, very surprised that the way Sri Lanka recovered post 21st April, and I was seeing that just post the attacks, the tourist arrivals dropped by almost 57%, and what I was seeing in October, it was down only 20%. And I think that's a fabulous thing to happen for a country like Sri Lanka. Emerging markets take much, much longer to revive than in case of the advanced global economies. And I think Sri Lanka recovered really fast. I think that was a good sign. And I think for 2020, if you really ask me, I think we would come back to where we were in 1819, even better off than that. From the signs of what we see for January and February in terms of the pace of bookings, I think we are seeing a very healthy pace. We are seeing international conferences come back, and something that we missed in the last year post the attacks. But January, February, I think looks very convincing, and I think it tells a story for everybody in this industry that at least 2020, 2021 will be a much more buoyant year for us. I think it's time for us to rejoice and celebrate that we are coming back to normalcy, and I think we should exceed what we did in 18-19. So I think it's a very, very positive sign that we move into 2020 now, and even the Christmas and the festive season, which is in this month, I think we should see a lot of enthusiasm. In fact, many of the hotels would really do well in this period.
So here's to a good year and good luck for 2020.
Thank you so much for a wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed chatting up with you.
So on Benchmark today, we've been discussing the hospitality sector with Pankaj Sampat, the Area Director, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Malaysia, and Head of Taj Asia and Taj Safaris. On the other side, we have Anushan Selvaraja with more.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
$8,500 done. 1,500 to go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on the LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index. Joining me is the Director of Consumer Insights from Nielsen, Terika Menadinia. Welcome to the show, Terika. Now, how did the BCI perform in the lead up to the presidential elections?
Okay, so in November, now as you know, the election fever escalated to a very high level with much speculation on who is going to win. Okay, and there was much anticipation and expectation on the future of the country as well. So this euphoria actually was reflected in both the BCI and the CCI. Both actually continued to rise. The BCI now stands at about 111, 9 points more than last month, and back to what it was at the beginning of the year. So that's a good sign. Then the CCI has also increased to 53 from last month's 48, which is an all-time high for 2019. So we are back on track right now.
How do respondents view the economy both in the short and the long term?
Okay, right now about 1 in 3 business leaders feel the country will improve in the next 12 months. There is in fact about 10%, this is in fact about 10% increase from last time over 2 months period, and where the business leaders are saying that the businesses will improve over both short term and long term. So again we can see that the expectations of good things to come in the future are there after the election.
Where do perceptions lie then in terms of future investments?
Okay, sentiments on investments continue to improve, as about 1 in 4 business leaders feel the investment climate in the country is fair to invest in. So in general, the business leaders feel that there is an improvement month on month, especially after the April bombings.
What would be your projections then, Terika?
Right now, I think, I believe both the indices will continue to rise. That's because now we have a new president now, and some of the changes and policies that he's bringing about are much appreciated. The tax concessions, the reduction of VAT to 8% from about 15%, which gives businesses a lot of breathing space, as well as some of the more minor details like keeping the environment clean, just to mention a few, right? So I think even the skeptics are now taking note, and I think there's a lot of anticipation of good things to come in future.
Thank you very much for joining us, Terika.
Thank you.
That was Director Consumer Insights from Nielsen, Terika Mienidenium. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
Done. 1,500 go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on our economy, joining me is economist and LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. Welcome back to the show, Shiran. Now, in this month's issue of the LMD magazine, you allude to a global recession being on the cards. Could you just elaborate on this?
So when we look at some of what the global forecasters are saying, things have turned completely negative. Some of them are downgrading their growth forecasts for even 2019, 2020 and beyond. And some of those forecasts are at lows that were seen post the global financial recession in 2007-8. You're seeing some of the numbers that we saw in 2009. So those indications are linking towards the fact that growth will be slow. But it's a question of recession. So one indicator, for example, that a lot of people look at is to see the US Treasury yield, the difference between the long end, which is the 10-year bond, versus maybe the 2 or 3-year bond, and the difference between it, and that has gone negative. So a lot of times that has been an early indicator of a global recession, and in the past it has been true with a bit of a lag. So whenever it happens, maybe 1 year, 1.5 years into it, there is a recession of some sort that takes place. So a lot of people are, hedging their bets towards it. You're seeing, for example, commodities like gold climbing up in value because of this expectation, and that's sort of kind of getting more material now. But still, there is room, I think, to get out of that mode. But it's the door is, getting quite narrow for that to take place, and for us to avoid going to a recession in that sense.
So how would this, if it does happen, affect the Asian region?
So the primary reason why we are in this tight spot, I think, is because of the ongoing trade war between the US and China, and that doesn't seem to be abating. And I think the latest reports coming out also suggest that President Trump wants to drag this on towards the election cycle as well. So this is not good news. What's happening is a lot of people and businesses are moving out of manufacturing or exporting out of China and moving into other countries. So Vietnam, for example, is one example which is seeing a lot of demand, and sometimes even they can't cater towards it because it's a lot. So that's happening on that side. And what we're also seeing is the whole dampening having an impact in terms of global financial markets, also not going too negative. But if it does spill over into that, then markets may not be ripe for emerging market debt and things like that. The dollar is also not strengthening too much, so that has been sort of a positive for emerging market currencies. Like Sri Lanka, for example, has strengthened still compared to the start of the year, despite all that has gone on during the year.
What about Sri Lanka's economy? How would this perform then?
So what we are seeing, especially with the July to September numbers, is that export growth has actually contracted. And that is a notable sign, because that's the first time since, I think, February 2017 that we are seeing this kind of a decline. So we're seeing the early signs of the demand side of it coming into place, with the global slowdown happening, and then markets like the US and the EU sort of also slowing down. So it'll be interesting to see whether this will continue, or whether we can rebalance it by attracting some of those trade diversions that Vietnam is witnessing, and maybe if we can handle some of those export orders, or if we can maybe start new industries in that side, maybe that's a big opportunity for Sri Lanka to really leverage on, and I think that could be a positive for Sri Lanka if we're able to get our act right.
Thank you very much for joining us, Shiran.
Pleasure.
That was economist and LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.